This is weird. I'm an actual real-life Disney princess. Hello friends, and welcome to the Treaty United Building a Nation recap for Season 4. If you do enjoy these, drop a like, that would be fantastic. Lets me know to keep doing them, and I have a really good time doing them because it allows you guys to catch up, and it gives me a chance to relive the season. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. Let's get cracking. Also, apologies for the rate of the Nordic Nomads videos have slowed down over the last couple of days. One, I've been obviously, as of course I said, focusing on the quality over quantity, but also we've had a lot of plumbing work being done and it's been very difficult to find times to record during that period. So I hope you can understand that. Next week, things should be hopefully back to normal as well. But in the meantime, some recap stuff. Of course, we are live right now over on Twitch, starting with the transfer window for Season 5, and there is a lot of stuff going on there, so you're not going to want to miss that. However, in today's video towards the end, I'm going to show you some stuff that even the people over on Twitch right now haven't actually seen yet. And of course, the VODs can be caught over on the second channel, link in the description. Before we get into the fixtures and the sort of stuff that's happened this season with transfers and whatnot, I just wanted to give you a little update on some of the youth prospects that you would have seen in previous episodes, as well as some potentially new guys in that batch as well. These are regions, of course, but I've got the Z-Gens finally imported, so you can see that as a thing, of course. Saitama this season, our young Irish goalkeeper from the first season, he's just sort of tailed off a little bit. His development perhaps wasn't quite where we thought it was going to be, and I feel like it's unlikely that he's ever really going to make any more senior appearances for Treaty, which is a bit of a shame, but he does still have a bit more time left on his contract, so you never know. Maybe a loan spell next year? Not really sure on him, to be fair. Evan Dunn is another of those players that, of course, was here at the very start of the save, and it's a similar story for him. Again, has played no senior games for us this season. Another loan spell for him wouldn't be too bad. It is, though, interesting that he has such a high transfer value in there, too, so maybe there is still something to him. But a player that we are a little bit more excited about is Nathan Daly. He was the star youth prospect in our first season that actually came through our proper youth intake, and he has been developing remarkably well, particularly on the mental side of things, although his technicals are really pushing along as well. Even his physicals, honestly. For a 19-year-old, he is extremely talented. He's been out on loan at Cork City this season, playing in the second tier of Ireland, which I think is an extremely good move for him. We're still not entirely sure where we want to play him, really, because he has a very interesting set of attributes where we think that playing him slightly deeper would have to be the route with him, or we could really focus on trying to boost his finishing and that up. It's a really tough one. Other prospects include Wayne Barnes, who I believe I showed you last year. He's only 17, so again, it's got a long way more to develop. Has an awful lot of PPMs, though. The best prospect out of this year's youth intake, which we literally got during the last stream, hence the lack of faces, is probably Kenny Logan on this left-hand side, and again, you can see what we're dealing with here. Though there is also an argument that that could also fall to Shane Quigley, an incredibly brave striker, but that's about it, really. It hasn't been a great year for us from the youth standpoint, but it's now time to do the fun part where I show you about the transfers and loans and whatnot that we've brought in this season. And boy, oh boy, have there been a few. But I just wanted to show you a couple of outs. Javier Noguera left. Now, basically, he forced a move. We didn't really want to sell him because we would quite like to keep a player like this around, but he was forcing himself a move. And when you look at the contracts that Linares offered him, 2.9k a week. Daniel Cleary also moved to the Finn Harps on a free. They actually signed him mid-season on a contract, and I just gave him to him at that point to move the money off of our wage bill because we really did need to sort that out at the time. Tyg Ryan also spent a season out on loan at Bray Wanderers, and Aidan Quinn spent the second half of the season on loan at Waterford. Some recognisable faces in here, no doubt. Kanfori Kaba, of course, was back for, I believe, his third season at the club. Still only made 40 appearances in that timescale. And in defence, he hasn't really played all that much for us this year, particularly not in the league. Well, 9 games, I suppose, isn't too bad. We then brought back Ricardo Stivanello, but sadly, he got an injury, like quite a serious injury. I can't actually remember what the injury was, but it was enough for Bologna to recall him, and they've now sold him to Virtus Francavilla. And the last of the loans that we brought in January was Santo Demetrio Benedetto, of course, back for another year at the club. And I think he had a good time of it the first time around. We needed more cover for Matt Blake, and he was the perfect man for that job. But now onto some permanent signings. We paid £8,500 to lure D'Amico Dehaney away from Dunfermline Athletic, and I think it was a reasonable deal for us, really. I've used D'Amico on previous saves, and he's had a good time with us in that period, so I figured that he was worth the money for £550 a week. We also brought in Paul Dow on loan from Liverpool for the first half of the season. They let us pay nothing for the loan, which was fantastic. He had an okay time of it, 19 appearances for us, scored a few goals in there, got some assists, started to get his act together a little bit towards the second half of his loan spell. Unfortunately, we're still in that situation where loan players will never want to extend their loans. You always have to send them back to the club and then immediately loan them, and then they come straight back again. It's very annoying. It feels like a bug because that shouldn't happen. And in addition to that, when you then do that, they lose all of their match sharpness despite only going back to their parent club for one day, because always that club is in pre-season. That's very stupid, but it happens. Unfortunately, though, Liverpool wouldn't let us have him back. Well, they would, except they wanted us to pay his entire wages plus like another £50,000 in order to loan him for half a season. So we said no, and now he's not played since. So GG Liverpool, well done on that one. And it was a very similar story for Ethan Laidlaw, who was a striker we brought in on a loan from Hibs for the first half of the year to give us a bit more backup in that role. Same kind of problem emerged with this one, although weirdly, once again, they let us have him for free, but then they wanted us to pay his full wages for the second half of the loan. One of our better signings of the year for me is Festus Arthur, who we got on a free transfer. He was released by Hull City, and we were able to swoop him and pick him up. He was the ultimate foil, I felt, to Sean Hall. We needed a pair of these guys to be really, really strong at the back. Now, you'll notice that he's only made 20 league appearances this year and has sort of not got as many appearances as you might think. Sadly, man fell off a jet ski and, well, you know where that happened. 5 months out with a hip injury. He had the exact same injury that Sean Hall had last season. We also had Keegan Green and his hair on loan from Hull City. I've had an ongoing battle with Grant McCann as he continually insists that I play him as a left back. I realise that technically he is, he's just not a left, like he's got 7 tackling, 7 marking, and 5 positioning. No, I'm not playing him as a left back. It's just not happening. We also managed to pick up Sean Hobson on a free transfer, just as a bit of centre-back backup, which I'm glad we had, honestly, although he hasn't really featured that much this season, just a few little starts here and there. Other players are sort of filtered in and out. Spent a lot of time at Southend United, but solid option. And for £200 a week, we could hardly say no to him on a free transfer, really. It seemed like a no-brainer at the time. There's a lot more coming. Yes, that's right. Ronan Darcy came in. He was released by Bolton. We thought we'd give him a crack. Did actually manage to score a goal for us this season, which was a really nice finish too. And it nearly sparked off a whole new thing where we were going to be playing him a lot more because we noticed he was making certain runs that other players weren't. And it just kind of never really went from there. I think what happened was he got an injury not long after that. And by the time he was able to come back into the squad, we'd kind of recovered some form and we didn't really need him anymore. We also brought in Greg Sloggett on a free transfer. He has featured a little bit this season as a backup, mainly because we wanted a backup to Booty in that defensive midfield role. Next, another of the free transfers. This is Tommaso Di Napoli, or as he's been affectionately known by everyone now, Nipples. A striker that we brought in again, more backup we needed to George Nunn and Enoch Asante. Neither of these players that I've really shown you here have ever really been able to displace the top two, but they weren't really there for that. They were all about backup, and that's what they provided this year. And I tell you what, he's done all right. 8 goals, 5 assists in the league. Or sorry, 7 goals and 5 assists in the league. Not a bad outlay for the man, really. Next on the chopping block is Jack Aerosmith, or Aerosmith, obviously, as you come on. How are we not going to call him that? We picked him up on a free transfer from St Johnstone over the summer period because he was being released by them, and he's a pretty okay prospect. He's been out on loan at Athlone Town for the second half of the season. Hasn't really done a great deal there, just got the 8 appearances for them, but he's got an assist in there. He's one for the future as well. Wanted to start stocking up with some young players if we could find them from time to time over this period as well, and he is one of them. And another of those is Sylvester Mathurin, sort of similar story. Great tackling and marking on him. We weren't really sure where we were going to play him, honestly, so he could really either be retrained to be a centre-back or a central midfielder, and we haven't really decided which of the two it's going to be yet, but again, solid option. Great aggression and bravery as well. Yeah, it just keeps going. We were able to find some seriously good bargains this season, and another of those was Idris Kanu. Sadly, he's not played as much as I would have liked this season, mostly down to the fact that, well, he picked up several rather annoying injuries. They weren't serious ones, but they were the ones that keep you out for 5 weeks, like 3 or 4 times a season. Not ideal. Doesn't like big matches either, but not injury prone, weirdly, but it certainly feels like it for sure. Yet another player, Luxembourg international, Danny? I suppose Danel Senani also joined us. Once again, it's a similar story to Idris Kanu, where he started well, had several injuries throughout the season, and then just sort of got phased out the squad a little bit, mainly because of the arrival of former Irish international Callum O'Dowda. That was not a signing I was expecting to make this year, but it's turned out to be a reasonably solid one for us. Didn't really get many games in the league for us this season. It was mostly just back up here and there and playing a little bit in Europe from time to time. But when you get an opportunity to bring a guy like this in, he was released by Bristol City and then took such a cheap deal to join us, so I was happy to bring him in. And then in the summer, we got a brand new loan report through from Bologna of the players we could potentially loan from. Now, by this point, we were actually playing in Europe, and therefore, it seemed like they were willing to loan us a higher caliber of player, and boy did they. The first of which was Ebenezer Annan, who actually hasn't been spectacular for us, really. I'll be honest, he's not been great so far. But the 2 big guys that have made a huge impact on the team this year, firstly, Nicolas Zenzola, and you might notice that his contract expires next year. At the end of next season. We managed to get an 18-month loan for Nicolas Zenzola. Now, he's played on the right-hand side predominantly, although he had played through the middle a few times as well. The biggest one is Luka Mihai. I cannot believe that this guy was willing to come to Treaty United. Again, look at the contract length. He's another of the ones that he basically took an 18-month loan here. He'll be back next season as well, and there is no way in a million years that I'm going to let them take him back from us because he has been so good for us. Just look at his attributes. For a player like this to be playing in the top flight of Ireland is absolutely absurd. And speaking of scary, this is Fabio Dabo. He is a regen. He's a Basel-Guinean central midfielder who was released by Braga. I don't know how we knew about this guy. I think it was because of a Vicente scout report that we just saw this guy being released by Braga and went, yeah, I think we'll trial this guy and try to bring him in. And then amazingly, he actually agreed to a contract. £600 a week for the 18-year-old. But look at him. To be this good already, he's got great on both feet, fairly professional personality, he's got consistency as well. He feels like the type of player that could really develop. Now, he does have a release clause of 350k, which we're going to need to get rid of. Been a mad one, and it's only about to get madder. As we actually started off the season reasonably well with back-to-back wins against Sligo and Finn Harps to get 6 points on the board, but it was sort of at that point when things started to go a little bit wrong. Although, what I would say is this happened during the Shelbourne game. Oh, I spoke too soon. Oh my God! But sadly, that set us onto quite a poor run, with a 1-0 defeat at home against Dundalk, followed by a 3-3 draw away at Bohemian, where we were actually 2 goals down in this one, so the comeback was a good sign for us, but again, an injury to Sean Hoare in there. But then it just got worse, as we lost 2-0 away at Drogheda. That is an embarrassing result, particularly as they went down to 10 then with 20 minutes to go, and we still couldn't do anything. Then a 0-0 against Shamrock Rovers, who had started the season remarkably well. I think they won like their first 8 matches of the league, and went unbeaten for ages. And just on Shamrock Rovers for a second, we're not sure if this is some kind of bug or some absolute weirdness, but essentially, during that transfer window period, the original one, we found a few excellent players that we of course brought on a trial and were looking to sign. Now, we tried to sign a couple of those guys, and they told us, 2 of them in fact, told us that we didn't have the financial muscle to sign them. And then another guy wanted £1,400 a week, which is beyond what we were able to offer. It makes sense, it happens, we can't offer £1,400 a week. But then, cut to Shamrock Rovers signing all of those players on contracts on £350 a week. I've realised that there is a slight reputation gap between us and Shamrock Rovers, but for a player that wants £1,400 a week, bear in mind, we were the Champions League qualified team at this point, but he wanted £1,400 a week to join us and then join Shamrock Rovers on £350 a week. And then the other guy that said we didn't have the financial muscle to meet his contract demands, also signing for them for £350 a week. What makes things weirder as well was when we looked at their contracts, they had the exact same contract, even down to £9 appearance fees for both of them. It was so weird. Everything in their contract was identical. But we then did finally pick up a victory this time away at Derry City with Tyreek Johnson grabbing ourselves a goal. But again, just real struggles again away at Sligo Rovers. Paul Dow's goal bailed us out after Elliot Labeth, a former player of ours we had on loan before, managed to score a goal for them. And despite getting a victory against Finn Harps, we were just sort of languishing a little bit. Too many draws, too many defeats, and a lot of the draws should have been wins for us, but we just couldn't seem to get them over the line, unfortunately. And then it was back to being defeated again by Dundalk. Then this time we were able to beat Drogheda just about with a 95th minute goal from Tommaso Di Napoli. But then again, more draws, this time away at Shelbourne. Of course, you've seen Enya doing his thing. Then a 2-0 win over Bohemian, which is probably our first big win where I went, yeah, okay, fine, we're starting to get our mojo back a little bit. But then it immediately collapsed again with a 1-1 draw away at St. Pat's. First game of the stream, away at Shamrock Rovers, and we go and beat them 3-1. Bearing in mind at this point, they were top of the league by miles. We came from behind here as well. 2 goals for Regba, 1 for Matty Blake, giving us a 3-1 victory away at Shamrock Rovers. Now, we did obviously fall a little bit then with a 0-0 at home to Derry, but then straight off the back of that, we got a victory against St. Pat's, our perennial bogey side there with Nipples Darcy and Enoch Asante getting on the score sheet. So suddenly we'd taken 7 points and beaten 2 of our biggest rivals in the save. So very strange. However, it was back to losing again as we then lost at home to Sligo Rovers. Bit of a shitty one, but it happens. And it was at this point in the year that we really did start to motor on then with a 2-0 victory against Drogheda. We then beat Shelbourne 2-1, and then we managed to get a 2-1 victory again this time against St. Pat's Athletic. And it was around this sort of period of the season when, as you can see, through the late July period into August, where we were playing a lot of extra European fixtures. We were then knocked out of both cups in successive matches, but that actually didn't really bother us because we wanted to make sure we cleared up our fixture schedule a little bit. But then we did get ourselves a draw against Dundalk, not a bad result, and then absolutely smacked them 4-0. I really don't know where that result came from, but it was brilliant. And we then followed that up with a 2-0 victory against Shamrock as well. And as you can see here, the results really did start to sort of go back in our direction with 0-0 here, sure, but then a victory against Shelbourne, sort of sour draw against Sligo. But then we found ourselves with another 4-1 defeat against Bohemian. Georgie Kelly scoring all 4 goals in the first half of this one. And again, it was such an even game that I really don't think we deserved to lose it by 4-1. But then it was back to winning again. And then it was back to losing as we were hammered 6-0 by St. Pat's. But at the very least, we were able to finish off the season in a bit of style with a 2-1 victory against Finn Harps, then followed by a 4-1 victory against Drogheda, who were of course struggling. And finally, the best possible news was us enabling ourselves to beat Shamrock Rovers yet again on the final day of the season with 2 goals from Enoch Asante. So putting them in the bin was really nice to see. This was how the league race finished in the end. You'll notice that Dundalk ran away with the league title, 77 points in the end. But you'll also notice that Shamrock Rovers, despite their insane start to the season, ended up slumping to a 4th place finish. Now, we really wanted to make sure we got top 3 because, of course, the 4th Europa Conference League spot goes to the cup winner, which was Derry City, as they beat Dundalk in the cup final, and that could have easily been us. But as a result of us beating Shamrock Rovers, or them dropping points towards the end of the year, it meant that they missed out on Europe entirely, and that makes me happy. Although losing to Derry City, that is less happy because, of course, they're going to struggle in Europe next year. But I did kind of want to just get one over on Rovers. But you'll also note that our former player, Stephen Christopher of St. Pat's, was actually the top scorer in the league. You'll also, of course, note that Drogheda stayed up relatively comfortably, beating UCD 6-1 on aggregate in the playoff. And there's a reason for that, because this is the second tier. You might notice that UCD qualified for the playoffs with 34 points. They had a negative goal difference and were 13 points behind 4th place. But somehow, through the magic of science, they managed to actually win the playoffs in order to get to that final by knocking teams out, and then just got absolutely demolished in there. But it's kind of nuts that they were that far off the pace and still managed to reach the final. Imagine if they'd gone up. So that is the domestic season in a nutshell. But I know what you're really interested in, surely, is the European stuff. Let's get into that. So we were extremely fortunate with the draw that we got in the Champions League. We got probably the best draw possible, and that was against Lincoln Red Imps of Gibraltar, which basically got us a free round of progress in the Champions League, which is good for money. It also meant that we had less rounds to potentially win to qualify for some kind of group stage later down the line. 3-0 in the away leg, George Nunn with the brace, Asante with the other, and then in the home leg, it was a similar story. This time, Sinani, Kanu, and Luka Mihai getting on the score sheet. And our reward for beating the Lincoln Red Imps, well, yeah, it was Red Bull Salzburg. We had got... We went from one of the best draws to one of the worst in the next round, where we unfortunately just weren't able to quite do it, really. 4-1 defeat in Salzburg. Now, what I would say is it was not as bad as that. I don't think 4-1 was very fair on us. The late penalty was a bit of nonsense, really. And they were just that little bit better. Obviously, they've got players like Shesko in there, Ludovic, Sucic. It's a great team. But then Zola did at least grab us a goal on the night. Not that away goals matter anymore, but we did lose 4-1. And we're looking pretty doomed at that point. But as you can see, we did some absolute magic. We took them to a park. And I mean that literally. You should be seeing a picture of it on your screen right now. This is the stadium we played in this match. 2,000 people, this apparently seats. Don't know where they are. Presumably you bring your own camping chairs. Imagine being Red Bull Salzburg and you turn up and you're just like, what is this? Why am I getting changed in some old lady's house? But it did the trick. We weren't quite able to get the win, although we did lead on 2 different occasions during this match, which was kind of nuts. So to take a 3-3 draw and only lose 7-4 on aggregate wasn't too bad. I think we gave a good account of ourselves in this game, so I was impressed with the lads. But we were a little bit disappointing in our first leg of the Europa against Universitatea Craiova of Romania. A 0-0 draw in a game which I think we should have won, but it was disappointing because we wanted to get a score down. But then, in the second leg, we went to Romania and won 4-0 in Romania. I don't even know how this happened. It's probably the best performance I've ever seen from us, honestly. Where we drew Sheriff Tiraspol, who had actually just been knocked out by Red Bull Salzburg. So there was a situation there where, had they not done that, we could have played Salzburg for a second tie of the same season. I'm getting HJK vibes again. But we went to Transnistria and won 3-0 away from home. A brace from George Nunn and another one from Sean Hoare gave us a ridiculous lead and a really strong chance at qualifying for the Europa League group stages and the, well, £3.5 million that comes with it. And we were just in dreamland, because what a performance. And then this happened. We lost 5-1 at home to Sheriff. They were 5-0 up at half-time off of an XG of 1.17. They had 6 shots and scored 5 goals, and it's just one of those games where nothing works for you. But what a heartbreaking way to go out, having gone 3-0 up in the first leg, to just have one of those games in FM where your opponents just score every chance they have, no matter how low quality it is. And that's exactly what we did. In our very first Europa Conference League group game, we beat Siska Sofia of Bulgaria 1-0 to grab our first ever group stage victory, because this is something else. Regba cuts to Booty. Booty pops one over the top. Zenzola with a volleyed chip over the goalkeeper for 1-0, and that's what won us this match and gained us, well, I think it was about £450,000 for the victory and more coefficient points, and more importantly, a chance in this group, which also included Red Star And would you believe it, Universitatea Craiova, who we then proceeded to beat by 3-2 in our second match, this time in Romania again. They didn't play the same narrow system on this particular occasion, but did find themselves 2 goals up massively against the run of play, as we'd missed 3 ridiculous one-on-ones right before that, and then we found ourselves 2 goals down. It was a terrible time, but it didn't matter though, as Booty, Zenzola, and then a Luka Mihai 93rd minute winner gave us our second victory in the group. But the madness didn't stop there, as we travelled to Red Star, or Belgrade in this case, obviously, and we struggled a little bit. We were 4-1 down in this game around about the 60-minute mark, and it just wasn't happening for us. But then, cue the comeback of dreams. Kanu in the 60th minute, an own goal in the 77th, and then Fabio Darbo playing through the middle to equalise in this one to give us a 4-4 draw away in Belgrade. It reminds me a little bit of that PSV versus Red Star game I had 6 years ago when I was in charge of Red Star. Madness. But I want to show you the goal, or rather the own goal, because it was this that with 20 minutes to go got us back in the match. Zenzola comes through, the goalkeeper clears it against his own defender, and it bounces into his own net, and that just set us on fire. And then in the return leg, it was an absolute ridiculousness. Asante, Nunn, and Zenzola giving us a 3-0 victory over Red Star. We just kept that performance going. Just 6 consecutive goals against them without reply. They did have a penalty in the 92nd minute. It was so weird though, because our goalkeeper saved the penalty, pushed it back out to the taker, and then the highlight just cut off. We didn't see whether he scored or not. Obviously he didn't, but it was weird though, because the game never credited the second shot in any way. It was very strange. Needless to say though, that gave us 10 points from our first 4 Europa Conference League group games and beating Red Star Belgrade. Mental. And that then made our lives somewhat easier as we went to Bulgaria. Once again, Asante, and this time Callum O'Dowda giving us a 2-0 victory, which was enough to qualify us for the next round as winners of the group with a game to spare. Mental. But we were still able to come up with one last victory to get a little bit more points on the board in this one. Regba gave us the lead. Ivanov equalised for Craiova really against the run of play, but it didn't matter as 2 goals from Enoch Asante finished them off in the 67th and 69th minute to give us one more victory in the Europa Conference League, which ended up with our group looking like this. We scored 16 times in this group, 16 points on the board as well. An absolute mauling. 6 points clear of Red Star we finished in the end, who very nearly ballsed it up entirely and allowed CSKA to beat them, as they did in fact, I think, lose in Bulgaria at one point. No, they lost at home, I think. I've just noticed that even for appearing in the second knockout round, we get another £500,000, even if we would have been knocked out. That's mental. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing for us this season.
I just poked myself in the eye. I just poked myself in the eyeball with my thumb. That actually touched my cornea. Oh god, it's cornea off the cob. It's gone.
And this is the financial situation. £4.5 million in the bank is what we've earned this season. We've earned nearly £5 million in revenue this year. And you might have just noticed something else that even the streamy people wouldn't have seen, because I went through one day just to sort something out for this video. And well, I'll show you. Our initial budgets, £27,500 a week in wages and a budget of $2 million in transfers. That is absurd. So that's the sort of money that we've got to play with. Now we've got to be careful, of course, because remember, we're going to be in the Europa Conference League groups next season. Qualifiers next year. So we'll have less chance of dropping down and stuff. So we do have to be careful with the way we spend this money, but it's still a great windfall. One last thing. Coefficients, because that will of course have taken a massive boost. 40th we currently sit, but this year 6.125 points gained by the Republic of Ireland. I cannot believe it. We are going to leapfrog ourselves above about 10 countries in one season. To give you an idea, that's the points earned this season by teams. We are above Ukraine, we're above the Netherlands. We've earned more points in Europe this season than the Netherlands have, above teams like Austria, Hungary, Poland, Croatia, Switzerland, Denmark as well. Ludicrous. And just doing a little bit of maths, as things stand currently, we would move up to 30th in the coefficients. We would gain 10 places in one season if things stay as they are. And we still have a chance to earn a bit more, but you'll see now that there's quite a gap between where we are and this next sort of batch of teams, and that's going to take a few years to try to overcome. It's so annoying though, because the next point where anything major can happen is 29th place, where there's a slight change to the qualification places, and we're going to be one place off of it. And it's not been all of us that's done this though. I've got to say, the other teams have had their part in this too. As you can see, Dundalk beat Vikingur Göta of the Faroe Islands 7-2 in the first round. They got a very positive tie, as did Shamrock Rovers beating Milsami Orhe, only just though, 3-2 on aggregate, which was awesome. And then you'll also notice here that Bohemian got a Gibraltarian team. Incredible. 2 of us got teams from Gibraltar in the same season, so we got all 3 other Irish sides through to the next round, where Dundalk were able to go a further round, beating Nia Silamina of Cyprus on penalties in the end, which was good. But this was where Shamrock Rovers exited the tournament, losing 4-1 on aggregate to Bravo. And lastly, Bohemian also lost 4-0 to Santa Clara of Portugal. That was always going to be an incredibly tough tie for them, so for them to go out, I wasn't really too bothered by that. But getting Dundalk through was good, particularly as in the third round, they were able to beat Grasshopper Zurich 4-1 on aggregate and knock out a Swiss team and to put themselves in the final playoff round. We were so close, but unfortunately, it was never going to happen as they were were beaten 6-0 on aggregate by Real Sociedad. They could not have had probably a worse draw at this stage in the tournament. In case you wanted to see things like this, here's a sort of statistical setup for the team. You can see, of course, 24 goals for Asante, 17 for Nunn, 10 for Zenzola. Regba grabbed another 8, while a man Nipples grabbing 8. Nathan Daly obviously out on loan, so that's kind of irrelevant. 4 for Kanu. It's been a good year from the guys. Top assister, of course, was Regan Booty, because of course it is. It's Mr. Booty Man himself. He is just brilliant. I believe he also had the best average rating of any player in the team. Yes, he did. The man's just a ratings machine. I don't know what it is. He just does a good job. Nothing has changed. As far as I know, tactically, we've changed nothing this season. It's just been a case of slow adjustments. It reminds me so much of how it was with Tromsø. You remember it, those of you that saw the Tromsø save. First season, we won the second division, got to the top flight, won the Eliteserien in our first season in the top flight. It was way too soon. Thus, when we played in Europe, we didn't have the squad depth to handle the domestic side of things, and we slumped down to 4th in the league. It's almost the exact same thing this time, except we had an extra season this time. So us winning it in our second season in the top flight, I think meant that we had a slightly better squad to go into this season. And as a result, we did do the same slump and we were never going to win the title this year. But we have managed to perform very, very well in Europe, which is making me very pleased because money, and also getting ourselves back up to second in the league. So it's not as bad as it potentially could have been. Next year, though, the plan very much is to go for the league title again. And I think with the money we've got there, 2 million in transfer budget and more than doubling our wage budget for next year, we might actually have the financial clout to be able to go and compete on all fronts next year. See what we can do in the Europa Conference League. Maybe try and hopefully make the group stages again, depending on how our draws go. But if not, then it's fine. And obviously try and win ourselves back our league title and win it for the second time in this save. But I'm very, very excited about what the transfers are going to look like because, well, I mean, I'm sure the people on stream right now have already seen that budget because I'm probably going to tweet about it, let's face it. But still, it's going to be exciting. So I will hope to join you over there. Right now is where we're streaming. We're going to be making transfers, scouting, all that jazz. It's going to be beautiful. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, drop a like, that'll be fantastic. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, that'd be awesome as well. Obviously, I stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and we're streaming right now, so go follow there too, and I'll join you guys very, very soon for Season 5 recap. It's going to be good.